Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do some coiling today. Build with coils and build a coil pot. First off, we want to do is start with wedging the clay. So when you're wedging the clay, you want to keep the clay on the wheel, on the wedge table at all times, and you're folding that clay on top of itself. So you're taking it down and you're just kind of rolling your wrist down onto the clay. And you want to do this 100 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if it gets too wide, then just stop, turn the clay 90 degrees, and then do it again. So you want to wedge this clay. Wedging the clay aligns the clay particles, because if you think about it, clay is a flat platelet, and so what we want to try to do is get all these particles so they're all in line, and it makes it very plastic. The other thing is we want to make sure we get rid of all air bubbles that might be forming in here, and as the clay sits, moisture develops pockets, and so we want to break up that moisture and really distribute the moisture evenly on the clay. So I've already wedged this 100 times, so now when you're rolling out coils, put that clay over there, you just want to squish the clay, form the clay into like a large snake. Now the thing about this is that this is an activity that people have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. Just roll it out all over, from Japan, Europe, Mexico, China. Someone right now is doing this exact same process, South America, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. So it's a very ancient process that humans have been involved with, a very historical endeavor. So we've got our coil laying on the wedge table. So now we want to start rolling it. When you start rolling out coils, you want to angle your hands like this. Imagine like big cylinders so that they're kind of at an angle. And then we want to roll it. We want to let that coil get away from you. Let it roll around. And what the key to it is to give yourself lots of room when you're coiling, so that it kind of gets out of control, gets to where it's spinning on its own. And this will help prevent the coil from getting flat. When it gets so long, you just break them off and then continue. And when I'm doing this, my hands are at an angle, and I'm kind of rotating that coil to the edges. So I'm kind of making them thinner and thinner. So you can see that this is... Now, the thing is that when we're coiling, a good average thickness of a coil is about the size of your thumb. You don't want to go too thin, because what we're going to be doing is taking the clay and smearing it from the top coil down to the bottom coil. So you don't want to go too thin. So you can just roll out your coils, get a nice coil about the size of your thumb, and then you put them there. So now we're ready to begin. So I'm going to grab my board over here, and I've got my turntable because I'm going to make a round pot. It's nice to work on a round surface. And I'm going to expose. So I rolled out a bunch of coils earlier today, and I've got them all covered with plastic so they don't dry out. We're just going to get rid of that. And the other thing that we're going to do is start with a slab. So when you start with a coil pot, you have to roll out a slab. You cannot just start taking a coil and rolling it in on a snake like that. That will not work. It will crack every time. You have to roll out a slab. So I've got a small little slab here. Now, to start round, you could, if you wanted to, you could grab, say, some yogurt container and use that. I like to get it round, I just like to spin it and hold my hand and then get a nice circle. And then I can just cut that using my coil, my needle tool, and remove that. So now I've got a nice slab to begin my coil pot. So the key to it when you're doing this is that you want to have, when you're coiling, you want to try to keep it very consistent. So a couple things I've done. One thing I do, whenever time you're going to join two pieces of clay, you have to score and slip. Score with the fork, and scoring is carving deeply into the clay. So you'll see that I'm not just making a decorative element, I'm really scratching into that clay and opening that clay. Imagine the clay as an English muffin, and you want to open it up so it's all craggly so that the two pieces will come together like that. So it makes for a really strong bond. So it's not decorative. You're not like, oh God, that's so pretty. No, you want to tear into that thing and really open that coil up so it gets nice and even with that texture on them, so that when you join them, they're really strong. Why do we score and slip clay? To make for a strong bond between the two clay particles, clay elements. Now, so I've got my coils are all scored real well. I've got my slip. I mix up my nice slip here. And we're just going to put a little slip on the coils. You don't have to go crazy on it. A little slip goes a long ways. All this is the glue of sorts. Kind of think of your, let's say this is my English muffin, and this is going to be your peanut butter. Okay? So you don't want to gob on too much peanut butter, otherwise it'll stick to the roof of your mouth. And it's not jelly where you're just going to ladle it on. You just want a little bit, just to make it a little bit more tasty. And just a little slip, and we're good to go. Okay, so now when we begin our coils, let's say I want to make a coil. I want to make a cylinder, straight up cylinder. As I'm coming around, if you wanted to, you could cut each one individually, like this, so you make each row very even. That's fine. If you want to do that, there's nothing wrong with it. The thing what you'd want to do is you'd want to start the next coil at a different place so they don't all line up, and then you wrap it, and then you cut it. Okay? So and then you can join that and start smoothing that. But we'll just put that to the side for now. Well, I'll just leave that guy there. Let's leave him here. He likes it there. But for expediency and to make things go a little faster today on our demo, I'm just going to take them and I'm going to just wrap one right on top of him. Now, if I want a cylinder, I'm going to make sure that that coil is right smack center on top of the previous one. And I didn't quite do a very good job. Let me do it. See if we get a little bit more on top, right around. Yes. So we got that guy, and we'll take him. I'm just going to start right where I left off, and I'm just centering the top coil right in the middle on that previous. And as you can see, I'm making a cylinder form, right? I could keep going as tall as I want it, all right? Make it as tall as take it to the ceiling if I wanted to. Now, let's say I don't want a cylinder. Let's say I want to have a pot that goes in and out. Give it a little sexy shape to the pot. So what I'm going to do, if I want to have it come out so it breathes a little bit more, and I mean breathing going, you know, like the pot actually kind of wants to expand out, I'm going to take that coil and I'm still putting it on top of the lower coil, but I'm just going to favor the outside of that coil. So I'm still putting it on top, but instead of putting it directly on top, he's just going to come out just a little bit. And of course, the more I exaggerate that, the more the wider I'll go. But you're not putting the coil on the side. That's not going to work. That's not going to work at all. It has to be on top, but on the just favor the outside. When I'm doing this, I like to put usually 3 coils, 1, 2, 3 layers, and then I like to use my wooden knife, and then you want to smear that top coil down to the lower coil. And the reason I like to do about 3, because it's still easy to get in there. Once you do more, it gets to be harder to do that. So if you smear that coil down from the top to lower at 3 at a time, it's easy access. You could also use your thumb, and then also it makes it nice and smooth. You could smooth that off, and you could do the same thing on the outside here. Using your thumb, just smooth, and that's why we want that clay to be a little bit thicker, because we're going to move that clay from the top coil down to the lower coil. So it just comes around, smooths this off, smooth that off, and we'll continue. Grab another coil, we'll move it around. So I'm just going to, again, to have that coil come out just a little bit on the outside, and we'll just keep coming around until, well, let's see, that's pretty good. So again, see how I've done about 2 or 3? So now I'm just going to smooth that off. The other advantage of smoothing off the inside especially is that you make the pot very sealed. In other words, so like say for instance in ancient Italy, not that long ago, but a few thousand years ago, they would write sincere on the bottom of their pots. And sincere is without cracks. And that is why today we write sincerely. When you write sincerely on a letter to your loved one, it means that your friendship is without cracks, and that comes from pottery. All things come back to pottery, and we'll just over time, I'll just keep reminding you about different things that are so cool about pottery, okay, and working with clay. Okay, got another one. So score. Each time we want to join them, we want to score them, and we'll keep coming up. So now, I'm going to pick him up right where we left off. He's fat enough, so now I'm going to start bringing him back in. So now, as I want to bring the pot in, I still goes on top, but I favor the inside of that coil. Favor the inside. All right? So you come in there. So it's still on top, and the more exaggerated you bring it, then the more tightly that form comes in. So if I want it to come in more exaggerated, then I'd bring it in more. If I want it to be a little slow on it, a little less of an angle, then I'm going to go a little bit more on top. But the key to it is it has to go on top, and then you favor one on the other. It's like we were talking about earlier. The first 999 are the tough ones. After that, it gets real easy, rolling out your coils and figuring out your forms. So we're going to do that. Score a little bit more. We're going to bring them in a little bit. Do another one. Oh, good thing I made so many of these. Okay, here we go. Again, favor that inside. And see how the nice thing about this turntable is that it's very quick to maneuver the coils around the pot. And you see how so it went out, and now he's coming in. Again, just smooth that off. This clay is nice. You make sure when you have a bunch of coils, if you have a bunch, you want to cover them with plastic, because coils have a tendency, he started drying out. He got out of the plastic a little bit. Some coils just like to misbehave. So you just got to let them know who's boss. So we're going to smear that off, make that real nice and smooth. Now, I know the next coil I'm going to add on here, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to get my hand involved. So I'm going to take my metal rib and smooth off the outside of this pot. And you can see that it's just a little bit of love on them goes a long ways. And if you want to make it a little bit easier, you can add a little slip on that or a little bit of water on the rib, and then it smooths across a little bit easier. And see, fluff them out a little bit. He's an awfully good looking pot so far, considering we haven't loved on him very much. And also, when it gets dry and it gets leather hard, we'll be able to do a better job of getting our form a little bit more even. But for now, he's going to be just fine. A little bit more scoring here. Got some good slip going. We'll put him on there. He's kind of a small one. Yeah, let's go a small one. Pinch his head off because he was a bad coil and got his head outside the plastic. So we're going to bring it in. Again, I'm putting that coil on top, and then I'm just bringing them in, favoring the inside a little bit. And then, boom. So you could see that I'm just like doing basically, a couple coils, couple rounds, one coil at a time, and then I smooth it off. This way, I maintain that control of that pot. The coil's coming in. And you can see my hand is starting to outgrow this top circle part. Okay, looking good. It's a beautiful little pot. Nice thing about with having it be this is a good time. Okay, I'm glad I remembered this. So, if your pot starts getting out of control one way or the other, you've got a paddle, and then you could take your inside hand and just kind of force that clay out and into the paddle and start paddling him around to where it gets to be that kind of rounded form that's a little bit more even, if that's the type of form that you want to create. I want to demo a nice round pot because I know some people like to have nice round pots. Some people, they don't care, but some people do. So we got to, let's see. We'll put him on there. This coil is going to go a long ways because I'm getting very small, and we'll see what we can do here because my pot is coming in. Now, we're talking about the aesthetics. How much more do we want to bring it in? Do I want to bring it all the way in to a little pot, or do I want to bring it back out to a vase form? So I think what I'm going to do, think I'm going to come right here, about here. I think I'm going to stop there with that. I'm going to smooth him off and get a visual read on this pot and see what I think in terms of, do I want to carry him back out? You know, some of the things you want to think about, sometimes the form, is it just going to be a sculptural pot that's going to sit on your counter or your mantle and that's all? Or do you want to have it be functional where you want, hey, I want to put flowers, you know, or do I want to put dried flowers? The thing about it is that, you know, the form of the pot changes, and especially when you start putting flowers or dried arrangements in it. So now, I think we're okay. I think we're about the same, we're pretty decent size. I think what I'm going to do now, I think I'm just going to bring him out so he's about out to here, kind of a classic vase form that we're all familiar with from antiquity, and probably we all have one in our house. Maybe Grandma's got one on her mantle with some dried flowers that she got from Michael's or Hobby Lobby sitting there. So I'm just bringing it back out. And so just again, even though the coil's on top, he just favors the outside. So we're going to come in there. So we're getting kind of a real classic vase form. I'm going to tuck him down there and smooth him off. So again, these are 3 coils that it's actually 1 coil but 3 layers. And it's just easy to get my hand in there and push that clay down. Get him to be. You should talk to your pot and tell your pot how beautiful it is. Such a lovely guy. It's a boy pot. I don't know how it got to be a boy pot, but he did somehow. Smooth off that inside. So let's see, how much more do we want? I think I'm going to try 1 more, and we'll see what we can do. If we don't like it, we just cut off the top, like the red queen, right? Off with his head. So we'll just put him on there, and we'll see what we like. And, you know, go from there. Okay, I'm going to do, that might be it. That might be it. But I'm going to try 1 more because I feel like living dangerous and see. If we don't like it, we'll just take it off. But I'm going to end here and have these join up. How do we like that? So I'm just trying to play with that form, move that out a little bit. Oh, I think we're okay, right? I think it's going to be okay. Yeah, I think we'll be okay. So, again, I'm going to smooth that clay off. Now, let's say you're kind of an anal person and you're like, no, I don't like the way that rim undulates like that, up and down, which kind of happens more for me on this one because I'm just joining one coil on top of another one. If you're real careful about putting your coils row by row, then you're not going to have this kind of undulating as much, or you reduce the risk of it that much. So I'm going to take my rib. Let's just see. We'll just kind of smooth these coils off and kind of start being able to get a clear view of the form. I think we're okay. Now again, you don't have to worry so much because as it gets leather hard, you can add a little bit more clay and fill things in. You'll be able to carve things off. You'll be able to smooth things. So we've got this. So let's say this is a little bit taller than I want, or let's say you don't like the fact that it's kind of undulates a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just kind of get right eye level with the pot. Take your needle tool, and then what you want to do is just kind of spin it, get a feeling for it being, trying to center that a little bit. And then you just bring your needle tool in closer and closer and keep spinning it. And you want to come down. You don't want to try to do it right like, oh, I'm going to pick the lowest point. Come down, sacrifice a little bit of that whole pot until you get a nice even line. So now I've got a line. I know exactly how I'm going to come. Take my knife, or you could use your needle tool, and just follow that line that you've cut, that you've drawn in there, and just cut that top part off. And this way, you can have a nice, even wool rim all the way. Then you can come in here with a little bit of water or a little slip and just smooth that off. Give that some love, round that off. Just kind of round that rim off so it gets real nice and rounded, looks real professional. and has a nice even feel to it. Now, the thing is that don't worry too much, because we're going to end up, when this gets leather hard, it's going to be easy to continue to manipulate this piece. So right now, this just gives us the beginning of how a pot, a very basic form of going out, in, out, you know, coming up a little bit like that. It's just an easy, simple form to start, you know, beginning our process of learning how to work with clay. And like I said, the first 999 are the difficult ones. After you've done 1,000 of them, you're not even thinking about it. All right? Sounds good. Let's be artists.